The experience of being aware. That is you.
It's not the real awareness. It's not the real you.
If I ask you, are you aware of the sensation in your chest, you will then go to this sensation and say yes.
Yeah.
Now, I'm asking you a different question. Are you aware?
I'm aware.
Where do you go? You say, yes, I am aware with such conviction, and you're right. But what experience do you visit in order to say yes? You go to the experience of
Consciousness, awareness.
Of being aware.
Yeah.
Am I aware? Pause. Yes. What happens in between the question, am I aware, and the answer, yes? Something happens. Where do I go? I don't go to the flowers. I don't go to the feet. I don't go to the chest. I go to the experience of being aware.
Yeah.
We continue with the study of Drigdrishya Viveka. So, verse number 6. Chichchāyāveshato buddhau bhānam dhistu dvidha sthita ekahankriti anyasyad antahkarana rupini. What does it mean? Consciousness. When I say the ultimate seer is consciousness, immediately what we think is, yeah, I get it. I am conscious right now. I am aware. I am sentient.
I am aware that I am aware.
We all are.
The experience of knowing that I am aware is everybody's most intimate experience. The experience of being aware. It's so accessible. It's the most accessible experience there is.
Right now we feel consciousness within ourselves. So is that the witness self? Is that Atman? Is that Brahman? Is that the ultimate reality which Vedanta speaks about? That consciousness which we all feel right now, that we are conscious beings? Vedanta says, actually not so. The consciousness that we feel right now, this awareness in the mind which we feel now, is a reflection of the witness consciousness, is a reflection of the real, the pure consciousness. The pure consciousness, we don't have a notion about it now. What we have right now is this reflected consciousness. The word used in Sanskrit is chit chaya. Literally it means the shadow or reflection of consciousness. Chit, consciousness, chaya, reflection or shadow. It's a bit like this. At night, we don't see the sun. We don't see sunlight, but in one sense we do. Because it's the sunlight reflected from the moon which illumines the world. When you see the world shining in moonlight, basically what's happening is that the sun shines on the moon and the moon reflects that sunlight to earth, and with that reflected light we see the world at night. This is exactly what is happening. Pure consciousness, we don't seem to understand what is meant by that. We understand what the world is. We understand what the body is. We understand what the mind is. We even understand what is meant by consciousness in the mind. So far, so good. But what is this pure consciousness they're talking about? Just like the sun at night, it's not visible, but its effects are visible. Because of that consciousness, because of that pure consciousness, the Atman, our minds are lit up. Just like the moon is lit up, not by its own light. We say moonlight, but moon doesn't have even a little bit of light. It's by the light of the unseen sun at night that the moon is lit up. And by that moonlight, we experience the world. In the same way, it is by the light of the Atman, of pure consciousness, the witness. I use these words synonymously. The witness, Sakshi, Atman, self, Brahman. Now, exactly like that, the mind has the capacity, being very fine, mind has the capacity to reflect consciousness and then use that consciousness. For what? For exactly this. For seeing, for hearing, for smelling, tasting, touching, for thinking, for all our conscious experiences.
Are you aware now? Just yes or no?
Yeah.
Are you aware?
Yeah.
How do you know?
I don't know how I know.
But you do know.
Yeah.
You know for absolute certain, I am aware. And what is it that is aware?
Awareness is aware.
Okay. And is that not what you essentially are?
Question is, what is Atma? Self. The materialist will say body is the self. Some people say the mind is the self. Most educated, sensitive, thinking people amongst us, we say, I am the person in the body. But Advaita Vedanta says consciousness is the self. But again, to understand it very clearly, it is not consciousness which we immediately think about awareness. Oh, I am aware.
Am I aware? Pause. Yes.
So I am aware. So this must be, is this the ultimate reality of the universe? No. That's awareness already limited by the mind. That's looking at your face in a mirror. The mirror is the mind, and the face you see in the mirror is the consciousness already involved in the mind. But the original face, which is being reflected, that's original consciousness. Because if we get a sense of that, we'll see how tremendously distinct it is from everything else. It is not an object. The awareness which we feel right now, which you call Chetana, that awareness which we feel right now, that's also an object. Because you feel it. But what feels that awareness? Pure consciousness is reflected in the mind, and it becomes identified with the mind. The mind feels conscious. Mind feels lit up. Just like the moon at night. The moon is lit up. In fact, when we were kids, we studied luminous bodies in the sky, and we would say moon is a luminous body, which is strictly not true. It's a borrowed light. In the same way, the mind is strictly not conscious. It's an object of consciousness, but it feels conscious because of the reflection of consciousness in it. One of the terms used for reflection of consciousness in Vedanta is chidabhasa, reflected consciousness. Here he uses a different term, chit chaya, also means reflection or shadow of consciousness. Because of that, the mind is lit up.
Just get in the habit of pausing and asking yourself the question, am I aware? And allowing that question to take you to the experience of being aware. The experience of being aware of being aware.
Sakshi, the witness consciousness, and Chidabhasa, the reflected consciousness. Chit and Chidabhasa, pure consciousness and reflected consciousness. What do these terms mean? First of all, the reflected consciousness, what it means is, right now, we are sitting and listening. If I ask you, are you aware? You ask yourself, am I aware? And the answer will come from inside. Yes, I'm aware.
Are you aware?
I'm aware.
Am I aware? Pause. Yes. This I that you refer to as me, this being, it's not an inert being, it's an aware being. That's what you are. That is you.
That awareness is what is called reflected consciousness or reflected awareness. It's not the real awareness, it's not the real you. The reflected awareness is like, when you look at your face in the mirror, you see your face in the mirror. And supposing you've forgotten your original face and you think, that's who I am. That's not who you are. That's a reflection of your face. That's not the real face. That's a reflection in the mirror. That has really nothing to do with your face. But suppose I have forgotten my own face and I take the reflection to be my face. That's what has happened to us. We are really the witness consciousness. We don't understand that yet. We don't grasp that yet. But we see ourselves as the awareness we feel in the mind. The reflected consciousness and the ego, they become identified. And he gives an example. A ball of iron in a blast furnace in a factory, it glows red hot. A ball of iron which is heated in a blast furnace in a factory, it glows red hot. So the heat, the fire element and the iron, they are identified. They seem to be one and the same. Exactly like that, reflected consciousness and the ego seem to be one and the same. They become completely identified. The connection between the ego and three things. We have ego connected to three things. One is consciousness, pure consciousness itself, the real you. The other one is the reflected consciousness in the mind. The ego always shines in the reflected consciousness. When you think right now, I, don't you feel I am aware? All the time you feel. The moment you think I, it's an aware I. It's a conscious I. It's an I shining in awareness.
It's shining in all experience, the simple experience of being aware. This I that you refer to as me, this being, it's not an inert being, it's an aware being.
So the second thing with which the ego is connected is this reflected consciousness. And the third thing with this the consciousness is connected, the ego is connected, is the body. So the ego, mentally draw a picture, ego, I, is connected with three things: reflected consciousness, body, pure consciousness. The connection between the I, ego, and reflected consciousness is natural, sahajam. It's like a mirror and your reflected face. Imagine your face, this face is the original consciousness. The mirror is the ego. When you put the mirror in front of the face, what happens in the mirror? There is a reflected face, right? If you have a mirror in front of your face, there is a reflected face. And this reflected face and the mirror, what kind of relation do they have? This reflected face and the mirror, what kind of relation do they have? They have a natural relation. Moment there is a mirror, there will naturally be a reflection. Your face will be reflected in the mirror. This mirror example is very good. Why? Because the ego functions as a mirror, the mind itself functions as a mirror, and consciousness is reflected in the mirror. You see, the interesting thing is, when you hold a mirror in front of yourself, what you see is the mirror and what you see is your reflected face. The original face is not seen. Correct? Your original face is not seen directly. What you see is a reflection. The mind functions in that way. The ego functions in that way. It reflects consciousness. So the awareness that we feel right now is like the reflected face. It's a reflected consciousness. We experience a reflected consciousness. We do not see ourselves as the original consciousness. That's what's happening.
Experience of being aware. It's so accessible.
It is not consciousness which we immediately think about awareness. Oh, I'm aware. So this must be, is this the ultimate reality of the universe? No. That's awareness already limited by the mind.
It is the most intimate, the most readily available, the most substantial. It's not as if it's hidden. It's not buried deep in experience.
What is this pure consciousness they're talking about? Just like the sun at night, it's not visible.
It's the simple experience of being aware.
We are really the witness consciousness. We don't understand that yet. We don't grasp that yet.
We can go there anytime we want. It's totally available.
Right now we feel consciousness within ourselves. I am aware. I am sentient. We all are.
It's so accessible.
So is that the witness self? Vedanta says, actually not so.
It's the most accessible experience there is.
Pure consciousness, we don't seem to understand what is meant by that.
It's available 24/7 to everybody.
The pure consciousness, we don't have a notion about it now. We experience a reflected consciousness. We do not see ourselves as the original consciousness. That's what's happening.
And when I say it is our irreducible self, I mean that we cannot go further back in our experience than being aware.
That awareness which we feel right now, that's also an object.
Okay.
Because you feel it. But what feels that awareness?